Most of us think of hospitals as cathedrals of healing and hope. And we stand in awe of the doctors and nurses who work in them as the architects of miracles. But even the best hospitals can be dangerous places with unknown hazards that can cause catastrophic harm. They are the battlefield of a war with an invisible enemy that never sleeps, failing support systems that can't keep up.
I'm Dennis Quaid. I found out about healthcare harm because it happened to my family. Since 1999, we've known that more than 100,000 Americans die every year because of healthcare harm. That's the equivalent of more than 10 jumbo jet airliners crashing every single week. And that number doubles if you include infections that patients get from hospitals.
The sheer number of deaths is shocking. However, what's even more shocking is that it is possible to bring this number to almost zero. So why isn't it happening? You will meet just a few of the leaders who are making it happen.
They call it chasing zero. And they are preventing the enemy from shattering other families' lives the way it almost shattered mine. Our twins were born healthy and happy, and we just got them home. Wondered if they had a staph infection. They had to go back into the hospital. They were overdosed twice with 1,000 times the amount of heparin that they should have received. Our little twins were the victims of preventable harm. They came very, very close to dying. You know, I've been in the hospital in my life. I had never given a thought to my own safety about being there. I always trust the doctors and the nurses, and they knew what they were doing, and they never make mistakes. But this is preventable error. That was a wake-up call for my wife and I to try to do as much as we could to try to make sure this doesn't happen to other families.
When the twins were in the hospital and they had made it, it made me feel that they had survived for a reason. First off, we really thank God that they had pulled through, but they had survived for a reason, that they were maybe going to change the world in a little way that might wind up saving more lives. I was looking for a way to help prevent harm to other families and children when I met Dr. Charles Denham, the leader of TMIT, a medical research organization in patient safety. He introduced me to the heroes in the movement, and I have found a role I can play. I've joined the army of those who are chasing zero harm together.
They're the group of leaders in hospitals who you can ask to step up.
I'll tell you what I'm excited about. I'm excited to be working with people like you, Chuck, because you've taught me quite a lot.
We are so grateful to have somebody that's a voice.
Oh, thank you.
Fear is a major barrier to action, but the great ones like the Mayo Clinic are ever vigilant and humble champions of high performance. They are just one of the Chasing Zero role models.
I'll never forget the day that we learned of the Quaid accident. A chill came over me. I asked myself, could this happen at the Mayo Clinic? The answer was yes.
The collaborative, empowering culture of Mayo allows nurses to redesign their workflow. They adopt safe practices and even allow their cleaning staff to get involved. They develop their own new cleaning checklist of high-contact services to prevent infections using culture methods from other industries.
If we can help them not to get more infection, we're not just cleaning rooms, we're saving lives.
This is a Pyxis medication dispensing unit. It's another system safety net we have to protect patients from the frailties of competent human beings. Our nurses enter the identification number and the patient name to make sure that the right medication is taken out of the Pyxis unit and the pharmacists put the medication in only after they barcoded it to make sure it is the right medication for the right patient and the right dose.
Despite the efforts of places like the Mayo Clinic, healthcare harm still occurs in many hospitals. Sue Sheridan is a great example of someone who has turned her family's tragedy into triumph by putting aside her anger and resentment, moving forward to make things better.
In 1995, my son Cal was born, a healthy baby, a normal delivery. When we were home, he started to change before our eyes, and eventually Cal was readmitted into the hospital. It was discovered that his jaundice was, I remember the nurse's terms, off the charts, one of the highest they'd ever seen at the hospital. They treated Cal's jaundice with traditional treatment with phototherapy. However, on the second day that he was there, after about 24 hours, Cal started arching backwards. They were classic signs of the onset of brain damage from jaundice. Cal now has a condition called kernicterus. It is brain damage from jaundice, and he has significant cerebral palsy. He's hearing impaired. He's speech impaired. Very bright, very witty, but his lifelong challenges were totally preventable.
We just finished a survey. We surveyed over 1,000 hospitals across the country. And when you look at the bottom performing, the worst performing hospitals in America, not a single board chair from any of those hospitals, not one, thought they were below average. I mean, these are hospitals that are at the very bottom of performance. They have terrible quality, and yet most thought they were better than average. A few thought they were about average, but not a single one thought they were below average. And it's a level of denial and a lack of knowledge about their own performance that I think is shocking.
Business performance guru Jim Collins has documented how even the mighty fall in his recent bestseller. The principles are frighteningly applicable to hospitals.
How do institutions fall? How do they go from great performance to good, to mediocre, to bad, and maybe even irrelevant and gone? And what we found is that it is actually a little bit like a stage disease, that you go through the early stages of the disease still looking healthy on the outside. You can more easily deny that you're sick because you look healthy. Now, if you look inside, you might not look so healthy, but you look from the outside and you can still say, see, we're still doing well.
If our healthcare leaders can get through their denial about their failing systems, it becomes a David and Goliath story. Goliath is fear. Fear of shame, fear of malpractice, and fear of cost. To win the war on harm, we must activate the inner David in our hospital leaders. They will find that Goliath is not as big as they think he is. The weapons against healthcare harm are leadership, safe practices, and technology. Great leaders take risks. They confront their fear to drive adoption of best practices, and they invest in technologies that make it easier to be safe. Has this been done before? Do we have role models? Absolutely. Many agree that the Institute for Healthcare Improvement's 100,000 Lives campaign, led by Dr. Don Berwick, ignited the passions of America's healthcare leaders to save lives and put us on a path to zero harm.
Don, take me back to when you stepped up to the podium and announced the 100,000 Lives campaign. Were you scared? What was it like?
We knew we were going out on thin ice, and I was scared. I stood in front of 5,000 people at IHI's annual National Forum on Quality Improvement in Healthcare, and I was going to lay out this challenge. Here's the number, 100,000, and here's the time, June 14th, 2006, 9 a.m. I really didn't know what the reactions would be. Denial, anger, silence. Of course, what happened was just the opposite. We got more involvement and more enthusiasm and more buoyancy in the pursuit of healthcare improvement than I had experienced in my entire career.
What was it like to realize that the 100,000 Lives campaign then was achieved? The goal was met?
The biggest surprise in the 100,000 Lives campaign and the 5 Million Lives campaign that followed it was the reservoir, the immense reservoir of goodwill, commitment, courage, intention in the healthcare workforce. Doctors, nurses, technicians, pharmacists, managers all over the nation, eventually all over the world, really wanting to make care safer and better. Not angry that we were challenging them to do it, but grateful that we would put a stake in the ground and that we would say, let's go do this. That energy, it still awes me.
Many of the main elements to the 100,000 Lives campaign have become key National Quality Forum safe practices, a leader's blueprint to chasing zero.
The safe practices are a roadmap. There's no need for every hospital to reinvent the wheel. These are practices that have been proven. There's a strong evidence base. They can be implemented in every single hospital immediately.
Leading organizations such as the Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, Vanderbilt, Catholic Healthcare Partners, and Brigham and Women's Hospital are working with TMIT to validate the financial business case for adoption of the safe practices, so that leaders will greenlight investment in safety.
For boards and administrators, I think the Greenlight approach will help them justify the hard decisions that need to be made about investing in changes that are going to tangibly improve safety.
We have some great action lists for leaders, like the National Quality Forum safe practices. That is, we know what to implement. So far, we're approaching that as a matter of voluntarism. We're saying, please do this. We know it works, saves lives, reduces injuries. And ultimately, we're going to have to mature, I think, to the point where a safe practice that's well known is no longer an optional matter. You have to be safe because we know how to do it and we owe it to our patients.
It's an honor, really, to be a part of authoring the QF safe practices. What I really appreciate is that they're involving patients.
You have saved life.
Because patients are a part of the healthcare team, an often unused one themselves. And so it's really great that they're involving patients in the process.
Mr. Quaid, to understand what happened to your twins, you had on the screen a picture of the two vials. I do have them right here. They look very, very much alike. The one that was 1,000 times more was the one that was administered to your children. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Not once, but twice over an 8-hour period.
Not once, but twice.
Yes. Now, how could this have happened? Well, the answer became very clear to us after talking with the doctors and nurses and doing a little bit of research on our own. The 10 units of Heplock and 10,000 unit of heparin are deadly similar in their labeling and size. The 10,000 unit label is dark blue and the 10 unit bottle is light blue. And if the bottles are slightly rotated, which they often are when they're stored, they are virtually indistinguishable. Now, since this brush with tragedy, my wife and I have found out that such errors are unfortunately all too common. Since our accident, the labeling on the vials has dramatically changed. Our twins, Zoe Grace and T. Boone Quaid, are already protecting other kids and saving lives.
Get up, Sammy.
While my wife Kimberly and I have been on this journey, we've had the privilege of learning about many other families who have gone through similar tragedies.
Braxton, he always had a smile, and he just, he loved life. He was putting in the time and the dedication. He'd spend hours at the stairs. Dad, throw some pucks at me, Dad, And I think the difference between an athlete and a professional athlete is their heart and their dedication. And I think Braxton could have been one to take it real far.
Now let's go back to the beginning. Braxton needed the surgery for sleep apnea. Was Braxton worried?
He always put on a tough face, but yeah, he was concerned. He was very worried.
What did you tell him?
That he was going to be okay. And it wasn't true. We brought Brax home from the hospital and everything seemed fine. He wasn't complaining much of pain. He was resting and he watched some TV and we sat with him, watched some cartoons, About 4 o'clock, he said, "Dad, I'm hurting." So I gave him his pain medicine, and everything seemed all right. He fell asleep, which seemed normal to me, and he woke up at 7:30, and he said, "Dad," he said, "my chest's hurting." And I'll never forget that, I sat and just comforted him, and I asked him, "Braxton, are you all right? Are you in pain? Do you need something for pain?" And he said, "No, Dad, I'm fine." That's the last time I saw him alive. We went months and months without any answers from the medical examiner. And, all we wanted to know was what happened to our son.
The Rells went for 4 months without answers, and then they were forced to seek legal help. The system failed them. 13 months after Braxton's death, all they had was an autopsy report sent in the mail.
When I went to get the medical records, I was given 2 or 3 pages, and I was told that they don't keep anesthesia records and nursing notes. And it just didn't seem right to me. So I talked to some experts and was given some advice on how to get the complete set of medical records, which I did. It really erodes your trust, and it makes you fearful. You think that you would have answers right away when something adverse happens to your loved one. It's been 13 months, and we still don't have all the answers.
And so you don't have closure?
No closure at all.
A lot of time I think that lawyers get involved, the hospital's lawyers get involved, and the focus seems to be on risk management after an accident occurs. And not to say that they weren't doing everything that they could to right the situation, but it's, as a human being, you felt that the last thing I wanted to do was focus on legal issues and somebody's liability about it.
The last thing we wanted was to hire an attorney, just to get the answers that we should have had all along. The NQF Safe Practices states that hospitals and caregivers should reach out to families after an adverse event. Without any type of communication, it makes us feel that, Braxton didn't mean anything to anybody but us. And, you just can't, you have to communicate. It's the most important thing there is.
It's understandable that a hospital reacts the way that they do, because it is a business, and there is liability involved, yes, and they have to protect themselves and protect that entity. But what happens in the end is that a lot of times the problem winds up not getting fixed because a lot of things get swept under the carpet. They don't want people to talk. They don't want the nurses to talk. They don't want the staff to really talk. So the investigation into what happened is stifled.
For Sue, preventable harm struck her family not once, but twice.
Shortly after Cal's injury, my husband, Pat, had a pain at the base of his skull and his cervical spine. They removed actually a tumor from the base of his skull, sent it to pathology. The surgeon came out when my husband was in the operating room, and he shared with me that it was a benign tumor. And 6 months later, my husband was in pain again. We got another MRI, and it was discovered that Pat had a mass the size of the surgeon's fist.
The final pathology report from his initial surgery indicated that Pat had cancer. This misplaced path report was yet another error that shattered the future for the Sheridan family, ending Pat's life prematurely.
We, to this day, still don't know what happened to it. It appears that it got filed in my husband's chart without anybody seeing it except for the pathologist. Pat underwent 5 more surgeries. They basically removed his spine. He became disabled, so I had a son using a walker and a husband using a walker. But after about 1.5 years of treatment, Pat's cancer came back explosively, and he woke up paralyzed one day from his waist down. And they shared with us that he had about 10 days to live. Pat had always told me that if he was going to die from his cancer, he wanted to die with family and friends and a bunch of really good wine. And he, after a long, long pause, said, I want to go to Disney World. He said, I want to watch my kids and my family have the time of their lives. And so after I collected myself, I picked up the phone and I called Disney World. And within 4 days, 53 of us flew to Disney. They put the kids in parades. They sent up Minnie, Mickey, Pluto. It was truly a celebration. On the 3rd day, Pat died at Disney World.
One of the biggest barriers to getting to safe care all the time, everywhere, is fear. We're trained if we make mistakes not to come forward, that this is something to hide and feel badly about. And sometimes people are punished when they acknowledge mistakes. A very powerful lesson gets learned immediately when that happens.
Kimberly and I put ourselves in the nurse's shoes. I'm sure that no one wanted to harm our kids, but it's human error. It's a part of the system. It should not be criminalized. All it's going to do is alienate the very people that we're trying to bring in to help make things better.
I wanted to work as a nurse and with babies since I was a little girl. In 1990, I graduated from nursing school. I had 4 little babies. Up until about 4 years ago when this happened, my life was full of babies. On the 4th of July, I worked a double shift, and we were busy, and it was almost 1 a.m. before I was able to kind of wind down and leave. And I lived a long way from the hospital, and I decided I was too tired to drive home, and I needed to be back in a few hours to do the day shift I was scheduled for. And so I laid down in a patient room on a patient bed and tried to sleep and got up to start the next day. And at 9 o'clock, I met the patient. She was just a very young 16-year-old girl, and she was so scared. The plan was that they were going to break her water and start some Pitocin, and she was going to deliver her baby.
Julie followed nursing unit guidelines designed to improve readiness of patients for anesthesiologists to give an epidural injection. She adhered to the checklist of the guidelines and prepared the anesthetic medication at the same time that she had antibiotic medication ready to go. A number of systems flaws contributed to Julie's absolutely predictable human error.
So I got her IV, her antibiotic, and her epidural bag. Both bags had ends that received IV tubing. I had her antibiotic in my hand. I knew that. But I didn't have her antibiotic in my hand. I had her epidural medication in my hand. And after it started running, I heard a sound and turned to her bed, and she was already arresting. People came to the room immediately, many people. dozens of people who are familiar with both of those medications that we used. Everyone saw that hanging there. In fact, I said, I just hung this antibiotic, and I think she's reacting to the penicillin. And then someone cleaning the room found the bag. They brought it to me, and they were crying. They put it in my hands, and it didn't make sense for a while. And I kept looking, and then it just crumbled.
Julie administered the wrong medication. Fatigue, identical medical tubing connectors, similar IV fluid bags, and a suboptimal barcode process all spelled death for the young mother. The hospital fired Julie. She was criminally indicted. As a single mother of 4 and with no resources to defend herself, she had to plead a misdemeanor to avoid prison. What happened to her led to the development of the new National Quality Forum Safe Practice called Care of the Caregiver.
Well, the Julie Tao story is really a tragedy because she was hung out to dry for making a mistake which was clearly caused by a whole host of very bad systems. She was truly the second victim in 2 ways. She was the victim of bad systems, as well as being emotionally a second victim. She was devastated by her error, as anyone would be. But in addition, she was the person who was the victim of these bad systems. And the lesson, I think, is not just that hospitals need to be responsible for their systems and fix them, which is clearly what they need to do. But there's a second lesson here, and that is Julie Tao was fired, she was indicted, she lost her license because she was presumed to be incompetent. There's no evidence that she was incompetent. No evidence was ever produced that she was incompetent.
Eric Kropp is a hospital pharmacist convicted of involuntary manslaughter after a 2-year-old girl received a fatal injection of saline solution more than 20 times the intended concentration. A pharmacy technician working under Eric on a very busy day accidentally mixed the clear saline solution incorrectly. By signing off on her work, Eric sealed his fate.
I wish I could change it. I wish I could change places with Emily Jerry. I wish I was the one that was dead sometimes. And it's just the way, because I didn't have anybody there for me either. And it hurts.
Well, I think the criminalization is a terrible thing because both the examples that I know, fortunately there have only been a few, but in every case, there were obvious explanations for why the mistake happened, and those explanations all have to do with the systems they were working in.
Well, we now have a safe practice around care of the caregiver, which define good ways to deal with the people involved at the providing end of care.
We pray for these two.
They need help, they need healing, they need support.
Their work, through their courage.
And you need them. Sometimes the best knowledge you could ever get that will allow you to redesign the care system for which you are responsible will come from the very people who have been trapped in the spider web of cause and effect that's led to the injury.
3 years after the death of Julie's patient, the hospital published an independent study revealing that multiple systems issues contributed to setting up Julie's error. An honest mistake anyone could have made. Never shirking her accountability for causing a death, Julie has moved on as a TMIT Patient Safety Fellow to help save other lives.
Hello, is this Portland General? Hi, could I have your patient safety department?
She is helping measure lives saved and dollars invested in safety from the impact of video stories now being used in thousands of hospitals deployed by TMIT. One of the many video stories is about a little girl named Josie King.
I would like to share my story with you. I do this with the hope that what I'm about to tell you will make a difference in how you care for your patients and how strongly committed you and your hospital are to patient safety. Josie was admitted after suffering first and second-degree burns from climbing into a hot bath. Josie's death was not the fault of one doctor or one nurse. It was the result of a total breakdown in the system.
The power of stories is incredible. In Story Power, The Secret Weapon, our article targeting healthcare leaders, we share some of the secrets of the power of connecting the head to the heart to prompt action. In it, we present the preliminary results of the Josie King story and its impact on 2,000 hospitals. It revealed that the majority of users have seen lives saved and money invested as a direct result of viewing it.
We can control hospital errors, and we can save the lives of other potential victims, other helpless children.
Well, the battle is one little life at a time, I think. That's what the battle is. You know, one mistake at a time, one little life at a time. And the war is really, the end result of the war would be taking medical errors down to zero.
So you need three things. You have to start with engaged leaders. Then practices that work. Then, if you implement the practices with great technologies that make it easier to be safe, you have the winning combination in the war on preventable harm. Here lies the sweet spot of high performance and safe care. Many hospitals are getting extraordinary results from ordinary things they already have today.
My biggest lesson has been to empower the staff. We spent 2 months listening to 250 people in this organization about what we could do to make it better. We came up with a list of 72 recommendations. 71 of those came from the staff. That's what we're implementing, and that's why things are getting better.
Harry?
Hello.
Hi, this is Amanda. She's going to be your nurse this evening.
An example of staff-led innovations is Share Rounds, developed at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, which helps nurses include patients in the process of passing on information during shift change, making the patient and family part of their own safety net.
It's really hard to understand how your day is going to go without visualizing the patient. We used to give report right out at the nurse's station or in the back room. The nurse would sometimes write report or tell you in person, but you can't really assess a person or be prepared for your day until you actually see the patient in person.
So they kept the IV fluids going. He's got LR going at 150. The first thing we do is we can get an overall picture of how the patient is doing.
So they'll write prescriptions for you on the day of. Yeah.
We can see that he's doing well, his pain is under control, and maybe address any needs right away. I'll be leaving now, but Amanda's going to take great care of you tonight. This way, before I leave, the patient is comfortable with who his next nurse is.
I feel more involved. It makes me feel reassured that the nurse coming on knows exactly what's going on with me, and they are in coordination.
I can ask questions as well, and if there's something that I'm concerned about or I'm thinking about, I can bring it up because the nurse that's going off knows perhaps something that we've discussed earlier, and then it sort of reminds all of us to pass it on to the nurse that's coming on.
No problem. Have a good evening. She'll take good care of you.
All right.
I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
I definitely think that this could be done at any hospital.
Knock, knock. Good morning, Miss Hunt.
Hi there.
This is Casey. She's going to be your nurse this morning from 7 to 3.
Just by changing the routine a little bit, and that might be a bit of an adjustment, it actually is just that simple. It's just bringing it in to the patient.
And then her IV was changed yesterday, so that's good.
I don't just think it should be done, I think it needs to be done. I mean, it provides for the safest way to care for the patient.
Another great cost-free initiative is the IHI Open School, which puts healthcare students into the safety game. Literally thousands are joining the action.
Check a Box, Save a Life. That's a program devised by medical students, nursing students, and pharmacy students who realize that students, when they're in training in hospitals, can introduce the surgical checklist as sort of change agents from the inside. They calculated, the medical students calculated, that a medical student during their surgical clerkship, when they're learning surgery, is involved in enough operations that if you do the math, if they could get the checklist used in all the operations they're involved in, one life would be saved. Check a box, save a life.
Dennis, are you surprised that we're just starting to use checklists in healthcare and having impact? You're an experienced pilot. You know the value of a checklist.
I can't believe it, to tell you the truth, that it's not there. It's how much does this cost, right?
Exactly.
It's the most important piece of equipment really on the airplane.
We're taking the World Health Organization checklist and we're combining it with the regulatory requirements so that we can use it in every operating room in America. Checklists help make things simple, predictable, standardized. They enhance communication, just like they do in airplanes.
Okay, we were just going through the checklist, right? You were calling it out. We got to beacon, and I said off. What does the checklist say?
On.
On. So, we missed that.
We missed something on the checklist.
Yeah. And that's why checklists are important. But they always have to be backed up by humans.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's human error.
Good point.
Right.
We're using checklists in our operating rooms so that we can make sure that we don't miss an element of care, that we provide safe care, and that we do it the same way every time.
I feel like we haven't even touched what checklists could do for us in medicine. Is that a fair statement or is that unfair?
No, it's absolutely a fair statement, Chuck. Healthcare is grossly understandardized. I mean, checklists are a tool to help us do our work, but they standardize processes. In healthcare, we have a very autonomous culture that is grossly understandardized. We got to make sure we have a checklist and ensure it's done on every patient, every day, all the time.
You know, what I see when I come down is we're functioning much more as a team in the operating rooms now, and I think that's huge.
If something's not working quite right, it can be reported and acted upon before the next case.
Yeah, the checklist has been a real way of getting to that. I think one of the biggest patient safety things we've certainly seen in the ORs in my lifetime. I think it's fantastic.
Avionics master.
Avionics master is on.
Emergency lights.
Emergency lights on.
Beacon.
Beacon on.
Technologies make it easier to be safe. Once you've engaged leaders and staff open to improve their own practices, they deliver great impact.
Currently, there's just a handful of hospitals within the nation that have the barcode technology. If they did have this technology in place, I do believe that it would save more lives. I'm just gonna double check here. The software matches the barcode on the medication to the barcode profiled for the patient. It does that safety check of the 5 rights: the right medication, the right dose, the right time, the right patient, and the right route. It does not do the critical thinking for the nurse. However, it does ensure that those 5 things are matching for the medication and for the patient.
Before we had the Smart Pump, we had a pump that looked similar but did not have a drug library. We'd go on the information we have on paper, essentially, as far as how to give a medication. Now that we have the Smart Pump, we're still responsible for knowing how to give these drugs, to follow the policy and procedure. However, this is a double check for us. We're able to program the pumps to know this is the way to safely give this medication. This is the rate. This is how fast you want to run it. We're going to use the barcoding system to scan your medication, scan your patient. Once you get all your checks and that everything matched up, you're then ready to hang your med. At the end of the day, this is what double checks your work and covers you as a nurse when you're hanging medications.
One of the interesting things is that using chlorhexidine with alcohol prep has shown that in type 2 wounds, which are the more common types of abdominal surgery and lung surgery, that that prep reduced the rate of infections by 40%. When we looked at our individual patients, we found that if we could reduce one infection of this type, that we would save somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 per event. So if we could reduce surgical site infections in 10 patients using this, it would have paid for the entire conversion to a new prep for the entire institution. This really has been shown with evidence in a well-designed way what exactly we can achieve as far as surgical site infections. So where is the rationale for not doing it?
The Computer Prescriber Order Entry, or CPOE, allows doctors and other caregivers to automatically check for accurate dosage, allergies, and drug interactions when prescribing medications for their patients. Without CPOE, this is a manual paper process with no safety net. This sophisticated technology, however, may not always be implemented well and can be less effective or even cause unintended harm. A real breakthrough developed by leading experts is the CPOE flight simulator that allows hospitals to verify their performance before they use it on real patients.
You and I have had the wonderful privilege to work together with doctors like Dr. David Klassen and others on the CPOE flight simulator. Just to put it in layman's terms, what is it and what's the value?
The flight simulator basically lets hospitals get a sense of how good the checks for problems are around medications when a doctor is ordering a medication. And what we did was to develop a set of orders for medications that have harmed patients and look to see how often the computer would warn about those errors.
There's no question that simulation is the future of medical care. I think it's the future in everything from surgical operations to the use of sophisticated devices to actually making sure that the computerized order entry system works as we expected it to. You can't know until you check it, and better to know ahead of time than to find out that our expectations didn't come about. For everything from surgical operations to teamwork in emergencies to the use of very sophisticated devices to the use of computers effectively, simulation and practice and rehearsal and getting it right in the laboratory, so to speak, will definitely be the way we move forward. This is going to be transformative in terms of getting to safer care.
One of the most powerful innovations in healthcare are automated infection identification and mitigation systems, called AIMS for short. They are being used to identify and prevent the impact of infections using computer systems.
I manage the Office of Healthcare Quality. Really, the mission of this office is to strengthen the nation's health system and to promote quality care within this country. We're targeting a variety of areas. The reduction, prevention, and hopefully elimination of healthcare-associated infections is a prime focus, as is medication error and coordination of care in this country.
Is zero the number? Is it rhetoric or reality? Can the reality meet the rhetoric?
Absolutely, it's reality, and we are focusing on total elimination. When I received my medical training, hospital-acquired infections were considered inevitable, but in the decades since that period of time, we now recognize that they are largely preventable, and our goal is complete elimination.
Pat died at 45 years old in 2002 with a 4-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. You know, he had a sense of humor until the very end, honestly. And he said, Brown, he said, you know, whatever you do, you know, you'll be successful. He said, but whatever you do, he said, don't you give up on patient safety. And he went on to say, you know, go out and kick some butt. So I started speaking up about what happened to my family and calling for change, and had unique opportunities to testify. At one of the testimonies, I met the WHO. And soon after, they invited me to join them and lead a program of patients from all over the world, just like me, that had experienced tragedy in healthcare, yet who wanted to contribute in a really productive, positive way. In effect, it was a call to action by patients to the healthcare system, to partner with the healthcare system, to work with the healthcare system. This is the exciting part. This is the part that inspires and ignites people. And for those of us here that have lost family members or children, this is the piece that gives us hope. You know, that the WHO says to us, patients, you're important, and your voice, your collective wisdom is important to the WHO. That's a powerful thing for us to hear.
Our future in healthcare, to create safer, more effective healthcare,
depends on partnerships with patients and their families. We need patients and families and consumers who are not yet patients or family members to become advocates in the ownership of their own health, their own health care, and to hold us accountable.
When Braxton passed away, it was pretty tough for a lot of the kids, and it still is tough for some of them. We wanted to run a tournament that kind of exemplified what we felt he was all about, and that's sportsmanship.
Pick it up, Sammy.
Kids that understand that they're out there to compete and they're going to play against you hard, but you're still kids and you're still out there playing a kid's game, having fun.
Right in here, right in here.
The Braxton story hasn't finished, but I think there's a chance for a happy ending, that we and hospitals could have a working relationship, that no one would have to feel the pain that we've gone through.
"14 years after Cal's birth, the hospital and Sue Sheridan agreed to join forces and put the past behind them to save future patients' lives. This may lead to them becoming a national role model.
The harm that our family experienced was, of course, unintentional. What we really struggled with was what happened after the harm occurred, and the wall of silence and the isolation that we felt. It was very much like a hit and run. We expect the truth and a sincere attempt to make every effort that will never happen again to another family.
When we had the opportunity to connect, for me it was actually relatively easy because I didn't have a lot of history, but I was representing the hospital. And I know that it's a difficult time, but it was also an awareness that it is time to move forward. We've come a long way in healthcare from where safety events were considered a cost of doing business. That transition from a cost of doing business to it's no longer an acceptable option. The challenge that we're facing now is fully understanding how do we get to that point where none will occur. The overriding sense was it's the right thing to do, and it's an opportunity to see what we can create together.
I am absolutely convinced that we can make a huge difference. So I'm thankful, I'm excited, I look forward to a relationship where we challenge each other, learn from each other, that we're gonna create a model that others are gonna wanna copy from Boise, Idaho.
Now they have chili.
Pat would say, right on. He'd say right on Brown.
It is true that when there is profound grief, the best medicine for grief is doing something productive. When something bad happens in life, we kind of have a choice. You can shrivel up and disappear in life, or you can come out fighting like hell.
I think we're ready to ski. What do you think?
I don't know if it's strength per se, but given what my family's witnessed and experienced, I don't see any other route for me. You can come out challenging life. And thank God I'm hopeful. You know, without hope, it would be a pretty miserable life.
Chasing Zero is the quest to ensure that accidental death and harm like what happened to my kids are a thing of the past. Zero is within our reach if we have leadership, the right practices in place, and we leverage innovative technology.
Visionary CEOs that are willing to adopt new principles of management and leadership and deploy them quickly are going to be successful. They will be the innovators, they're the pioneers, but more than that, they will have the feeling of pride and in accomplishment in what they've done for their own organization. I want everybody to remember the essential purpose of why people go into healthcare. It's because they care about people, they care about health status, they care about saving lives.
If the future looks like the past, we'll achieve nothing. In the past 10 or 12 years, we've written a great deal about safety, and we've done very little about it. The future has to be roll up your sleeves, let's get going. Those who supply to the hospital and medical industry need to make certain that they not only have safe products and devices, but they're used as safely as possible. Those who use these things must be certain that they're used only to achieve the best possible clinical outcome that we can achieve. Those of us who pay for this care must assure all those families who are paying premiums that we're using those dollars as wisely as possible to lead to the best possible outcomes in the safest possible environment.
We're really bringing the forces, the energy, the resources that we need into this really, really important sphere, that now is the time. There is enough knowledge, there's enough energy, we have enough money in the system currently to do what we need to do. What we don't have enough is action.
We should do everything we can so that people can reach their full potential for health. That's what Chasing Zero is all about. And that's why it's such an inspirational, aspirational, and realistic goal.
I get asked a lot by normal consumers of care what they can do to make their care safer. I generally advise them, take someone with you, make sure that you're not alone in your care system. But I think I'm more and more thinking that the answer is speak up. We have standards. We know, like the National Quality Forum, safe practices. We know what standards hospitals should be adopting. As a consumer of care, ask your hospital. Ask them if they're using the kinds of standards that we know can make your care safer.
So the National Quality Forum safe practices are a tremendous opportunity for all leaders now to unleash their full potential, to improve patient safety and healthcare quality, and it's time to act now.
I have found the role that I can play, and it is to partner with the best experts and drive awareness of what we can do if we act now. The Quaid Foundation has merged into TMIT to apply the power of stories to bring consumers and leaders together. Our mission is to save lives, save money, and bring value to the communities we serve. Facts, figures, and statistics reach the head, but nothing happens unless we reach the heart, through stories of real people that put the hands to work. Join us in this war on preventable harm. 0 is the number. Now is the time.